the beauty of the pain is that when it's so high,
Hmm.
either take you out, like you want to like kill yourself, or you can transform it into something purely magical. The pain levels were just so high. I was so excited. We were dating for a while. If I was going to marry him, all that stuff. So he left, and I was in like fetal position, just crying on my bed in like sheer shock and pain. But I always had an immense amount of resilience.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I like to honor our guests. First, I like to stop and pay my respects because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive, their time. 24 hours has been offered to every creature on this planet, and how you treat time will expose your sins, as they say. I keep trying to tell you guys, learn to honor her, and she will honor you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It has created Gaia before us, and we want to welcome her because we want to have access to her, and she's allowing us through her vulnerability to be seen. And so we want to honor her and thank her for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you here. This is how we do it here. One of our customs, we have these wonderful customs, is to ask you this question. And I alluded to the two positions that we occupy as we begin our journey. The first is self-love. We begin to learn who we are. That's the first aspect of the journey. And then the second is the graduation class where we get an opportunity to become servants. And my question to you is this, which give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and then answer this question. How do you serve mankind?
I love it. So, hi guys, I'm Chaya Garcia, also known as the Epic Love Expert. I help primarily singles learn how to love themselves so that they don't fall prey to choosing an exchange of energy and filling up a void and calling that love. So that's the answer to also what my purpose is. You started off pre-interview with a story about a conversation with someone who then you helped change her life to a point where she didn't commit suicide. When I was 14, my parents had split and my environment was very chaotic. And every night before I would go to sleep, I would write suicide notes in my head. And I didn't take action on it, but I promised myself, I made a very strong commitment that I would transform all of my pain and the dysfunction from where I came so that I can create a phenomenal environment for my baby girl. I was not pregnant, it was just a future child. And I held on to that. And it was that promise to my baby girl that kept me never succumbing to pain. And so as I aged, then you start dating and you're like, wait, this isn't what I worked so hard for. Like this person isn't the opposite of of taking away all the pain. Like they're not the messenger for the magic that I want to create in my home. And so even though leaving relationships, especially ones you love and are fantastic, can be so excruciating, I chose always to go through short amounts of pain of breakups so that I didn't have to live long amounts of pain of never feeling like I was married to my highest potential of love. And then, so now I'm there. I am happily married to an extraordinary man. When I got pregnant, we never checked the gender. And of course, my first baby was a baby girl, Amuna. She grabs my mic and she goes, I love myself. I appreciate myself. And I broke the cycle. And my home really is magical. And she's only 6 and she grabs a mic and she teaches people how to love themselves and she hands out affirmations and tips to the people at the supermarket. And she looks them in the eye and she goes, thank you so much. And she hands them a tip. And when you can change pain and transform it, it becomes your pleasure. And when you take trauma and transform it, it becomes your treasures. So that's what I do. I primarily help single people learn how to profoundly love themselves and commit to themselves so that they can design their love life and their future life instead of living it by default.
Yeah, that's a powerful assignment. I believe there's a scripture that says to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy might and all thy strength, and to love your neighbor as you love self. And I believe that many people on this planet don't love themselves. And because they are not acquainted with love, they are not able to love others. And that is why the place is the way it is today. Because if you love yourself, you're not going to treat yourself like you treat others. And so when one begins the journey, and especially when you learn to love yourself, when that person who begins their journey learn to love themselves, when they say to someone, I love you, it carries a much more definitive power and meaning coming from that individual. But if someone has not really gone through the journey and they say, I love you, it doesn't have the amount of impact that that individual that has gone through. Why? Because that person who has gone through has looked at her or his darkness, their darkest part of themselves, and loved themselves yet beyond that. And the person who hasn't done that yet is lying. Anyway, one of our customs
No,
is
it's
to go
fair.
back in the beginning. I call it the beginning of our beginnings. It is our family. We call this unit the family. That's the first location that you and I will reside for a while, usually 18 years or so. But in this space right there, we're going to learn a couple of very important things. We're going to learn communication skills. We're going to learn, we're going to start developing our beliefs right there. We're going to be developing our patterns of behavior right there, our mindsets, limitations, or those that are have insight at a young age go beyond those limitations. But we're going to start doing a couple of things there. And all of this is going to help you and I to start developing our perception, which will then guide our lives, make decisions, so forth. What was your family unit?
From birth to 18,
Yeah. How was your family?
it was on the outside very peaceful. I never heard my parents fight. I never heard them argue. I lived a very comfortable life. My father always had money. He was a doctor, so that we didn't have any financial struggles. Not that I knew when I was little, but
Hmm.
as I aged, I realized that. But one of the things about addiction and codependency, which I learned when I was transforming my pain, is that it could be subtle and insidious,
Hmm.
meaning you don't see it, but it can create toxic patterns.
Hmm.
It's like when you were saying earlier, if you don't know how to love yourself, you say, I love you to other people, but it doesn't have the same impact because it's not, I love you. It's like, I love you. Like, will you also love me back?
Yeah.
And my mother was an active codependent and my father was an active addict, but nothing hard like marijuana, things that
Hmm.
like you would think are functional. And he was a functional doctor. And just so you know, my dad's still alive. I love my dad. He grew up, in the times where smoking pot was much more normal, or it's still, I guess people still do it now. But um, and the thing about that type of dynamic is that a codependent always is trying to control other people,
Uh-huh.
and an addict is always just trying to control himself with the drug. So what there wasn't in my home life was boundaries and respect. And again, nothing insane. But when you age, when I was getting older, and then I woke up one day at 26 and the boyfriend at the time left me to go do drugs. And I was like, wait, I've been here before. Every single guy that I have dated, literally since I was 11 with my first like cutesy boyfriend, I was saying these same words: choose me or the drugs.
Yeah.
I don't do drugs. I don't want to do drugs, but you're doing drugs. You're smoking pot or whatever. Like, choose me or the drugs. But at 26, after you're saying that for like over 10 years, you're like, holy crap. And then I had that divine moment where I asked, where God like really was just so grateful and graceful in my life, where I had this moment and I was like, how did I create this? Like,
Yeah.
what about me and my belief systems facilitated and created this scene where I'm in my home and the boyfriend comes and I'm so excited and I make breakfast and I set up the coffee and he is so ready to abandon me to choose drugs over me. And the thing was, I didn't know how to love myself. No one teaches you that if you don't love yourself, you will exchange every part of your body, mind, and soul for love
Hmm.
because you really need it.
Yeah.
You really need love and attention. So my childhood was, so to speak, peaceful. My parents did get divorced at 11, and till 13 was like the process of divorce. So there was a massive trauma there. But at the same time, the things that I learned were to try to manipulate my environment instead of accept it. And until I learned to accept reality instead of trying to change it or people, did I find my truth and then my ability to have enough faith to walk away from anyone who didn't serve me and match where I wanted to go.
Yeah, that's a powerful lesson to learn because most people, I've done this a couple of times, interview some folks with your skill set or your revelation. And it's really fascinating the life that they had and that revelation that they now were able to first love the self, the power that is behind that. When you were looking at, here is this young girl, and she has been provided for the physical stuff. And I keep telling people the material things is never the language of the soul. It is for the body. But we are told that in religion that we are truly the soul and the spirit. And we have psychologists will say that individual is the subconscious being. Subconscious being, the currency of the subconscious being is not material stuff. So, Matt, I don't care how much money you have or whatever material things. And we know this because we have millionaires killing themselves all day long because so then money is not the problem because, again, that's not the language of the subconscious being. Here's this girl being formed subconsciously, if you will, by the behaviors of mom and dad. And she's drinking all of this in data. And again, the data that you are drinking in and and we are drinking in as young kids is energetic pattern. And so here you are drinking all this wonderful energetic patterns into your being, and they're going to manifest later on in your life. And you saw them manifesting through your boyfriends. When you were looking to go towards, as you're growing up and you're heading in, trying to leave home to head to become an independent individual, you have these crossroads, if you will, in life that shows up all the time: school and work. Which road did you pick and why did you pick that road?
So I chose school based on the fact that that was what I was taught. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and he came completely emaciated without any language, without any money, and with massive amounts of trauma.
Yeah.
And he actually built from literal blood and sweat a multi-million dollar business. By the time I was, however old I was, but the thinking of society, which is now starting to fade, was that you get an education.
Uh-huh.
So I did that. I went to school, I got straight A's. Then I did for college, for 4 years of college, and I did 2 years pre-PhD because I wanted to go into a PhD program. Then I was like, screw that. I don't want 7 years of a PhD. So I switched to a master's program. I did 2 years master's, all high honors, straight A's, 4.0. And then I graduated like 26, 27 years old. And at this point, that's when the boyfriend situation happened. Well, the last one, or the
Yeah.
one that opened up. And I was like, I have 2 degrees. I have a house that I partially owned. I have a nice car. I have a cute boyfriend. I did everything they told me to do. But I was so sick, and not physically, but mentally. I was anxious. I was drinking beer. I was in a relationship that I knew wasn't to my highest potential, but the thought of leaving him was so frightening. It was like a death. So many people don't leave because they're so afraid of abandonment because they haven't found themselves in God, that I couldn't leave. It was just too scary. And so I chose the educational route because it was taught to me. But then when I finished it, there's nothing positive about it. And now that I'm 37, turning 38, and we started my entrepreneurial journey like a bit ago, I'm like, it should be illegal. How they ship people into schools and they teach them absolutely nothing of value. I have a book here that I'm almost done with. Well, it's the manuscript part of it, called The Epic Love Habit. And the beginning of the book, it's for corporate to go into corporate cultures and teach people how to love themselves so that they can amplify their work and also the relationships that they're with.
Mhm.
during their jobs. And the first part of the book is literally all the people who made multi-million dollars and killed themselves, like Robin Williams, the CEO of Zappos, and it goes on and on and on. And so when I started becoming an entrepreneur, just more recently, like spending thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars investing in learning, they teach you things like communication, negotiation, emotional regulation, grit. And I'm just like, and how to make money and how to generate wealth so that you can impact the world in a more significant way. And I'm like, my grandfather spent like $200,000 on my school, and I spent 8 years, my whole 20s. My whole days, I was in school learning nothing of value to sustain a relationship, my marriage, myself, my relationship with God, or how to make money, like wealth, not just a paycheck. And I'm like, this is crazy. So that's your answer for where I went.
Well, the system or the programmers of this dimension are not interested in programming you as to who you are. That's not their job. They don't want that because what they're looking for are cogs in their system. And so that cog has to come out and be in debt to stay in that system and to be controlled there. And because that is the purpose of them not doing, educating us as to who we are. And that is where you have, I call that day of the visitation, where God has to, your whole world, because of your decisions that you have been making, all those red flags that you have been bypassing and whatever. And tell people that life in parts of it until the journey is like bolero. It starts very quiet, and then one day all you hear is all these crashing cymbals, and your whole world is all over the place, and you're laid out screaming and yelling because of the noise that you're hearing in your life. And so when you get to that space and you realize all the stuff that they have been talking about has been a lie, and it is a lie because you are still suffering. And you talked about all those millionaires that are killing themselves. Money is not the language of the subconscious being or the soul. It is not. And so the accumulation of things which they teach us will never satisfy him. And that's why he will always be asking questions. Is this it? Is this life? Is this it? Is this life? Because that's not it until you begin to dive in and talk to me about your day of visitation, as I call it. You are the energetic programs that you received from mom and dad kept manifesting. And then this particular day, it manifested, but something different happened. You began to question how. And as I said, that's the space where you become the observer. Talk to me about that day. What was it that you believed within you caused you to stop and say, wait a minute, that you didn't do before?
I really just want to also give it over to God. A big part of it is just grace. And then another thing is the repetition. Because I was so consistent in my cycle of finding a boyfriend who was very sweet, very affectionate, very intelligent, nothing wrong. There was absolutely nothing wrong on the outside. Just inside there wasn't consistency and commitment. And you can't really grow without consistency and commitment,
Mhm.
especially when a lot of inconsistency and abandonment, by not default of abandonment in the sense that they left me. A lot of them, they would stay with me, but when someone doesn't love themselves or when someone is in an active state of addiction, they abandon you by default of just not being available for you when you
Mhm.
need them.
Yeah.
So that is a form of abuse. Like when you see a child who isn't getting their needs met and they're neglected, you can call CPS. Neglect is a form of abuse. So that moment was me, first of all, I got so excited. I knew he was coming over and I made breakfast and I printed out something for us to read together. And he comes in tired and slow, whatever, and so disinterested in everything I prepared. And then he tells me he's breaking up with me. And it was so shocking. I think the beauty of the pain is that when it's so high,
Mhm.
either take you out, like you want to kill yourself, or you can transform it into something purely magical. So the pain levels were just so high. I was so excited. We were dating for a while, thought I was going to marry him, all that stuff. So he left and I was in like fetal position, just crying on my bed in like sheer shock and pain. But I always had an immense amount of resilience going back to the first part of the conversation when I was 14, wanting to kill myself and thinking, I will never allow my pain to stop my life. Like I will never succumb to this. So there I am again now 26
Yeah.
and I'm still thinking like, "Whoa, like, I will not succumb to this." And so how did I create this? And in that moment where I thought, "How did I create this? What about me? What about my belief systems?" Like, literally had this scenario play out,
Yeah.
I was able to take full responsibility for everything that happened in my life after that. And then I started going to the 12-step program and recommendation from a friend, like Naranon, which is for
Hmm.
friends and family members of addicts. And I learned I was really, really sick, even though there was nothing visible. I looked good. I was going for a run. I had 2 degrees. I had money, everything on the surface, what American society teaches you. I was fantastic. But I was so sick in my head because I didn't know how to let go and I didn't know how to love myself. And so that moment was just an opportunity for me to say, you know what, pain sucks, but if I can transform it and take full responsibility for my life, I can create magic. And that's what I have now in my home. Thank God, obviously with work and challenges, but primarily,
Hmm.
and what I'm now helping the world do in their own capacity.
So talk to me about that. Here you are, you got this wake up call, which is a wonderful thing. And I said to you that trauma gives birth to us, in other words. Because when my mom told me about how traumatic I was, and again, we enter into those realms through trauma, and you give birth to you here. Beautiful location. This girl is slapped in her face with reality. She is seeing that all the things that she has attained naturally doesn't mean a thing. She's suffering, as you said, in her mind. She has given the opportunity to wake up. Right there, you talked about the 12 step. Right there, I want you to talk to me about right there. When that revelation came, and you began to now stand up and to begin the 12th step. As you are doing that, what did you begin to learn about you?
I really learned that I was really sick and I didn't know it because I was so hard on myself. When you're born into American society or other societies where you're taught to get good grades or get an education or make money or make a job, what you're essentially doing, which is why my kids are not going to be in school. Right now they're almost 5 and 6 and I'm fine with them learning how to read and write, but primarily they've been homeschooled and they will be after preschool. School damages your self-esteem. It teaches you to get an A. It teaches you to get
Hmm.
one answer. It teaches you that your self-esteem is predicated on one version of somebody else's approval of success. It's crazy. It does not teach you how to communicate, how to love yourself, how to protect yourself, how to have boundaries. So for me in that moment when I just learned that I was so sick because I was so hard on myself and that I was never happy because I was never living. I was never in the moment. I was never being. I was never appreciating myself. I was never loving myself. I was not loving life because I was always like, what's next? When you're an American child, they're like, okay, you get your bachelor's and then you get your master's and then you get this and then you have to get a job and then you have to get a promotion and then you have to make and you're never enough ever. They just predicate you on being never enough. And most people, whether they kill themselves or not, that's a horrible feeling. So for me, I realized that I was just so hard and critical about myself without being aware of it because it was normal
Huh?
and it was destroying my body and my relationships.
Normal is the fence by which they keep you and I in. Anything that is not normal it begins to be a problem. The whole system we are brought into and we're born into, this world system, is designed to teach us to get validation from the outside. Everything that we do, everything. The journey is the opposite of that. It teaches you to get your validation from the inside. And so that is why they will never teach any child anything that has to do with getting internal validation versus external validation. Fashion, the food we eat, the way the body shaming, everything that the outside world, this dimension, if you will, outside in the natural realm, seeks outside validation. It promotes that. And that is why you have such people like yourself, this young girl being sick in her mind because she is needing that validation from the outside. And so now this program is allowing you to experience you as an individual. What tools did you bring into your life? And I'm familiar with the 12 step. What tools did you bring into your life to help you to start now loving you? Because you're seeing yourself, your heart and yourself, as you said, you're seeing all your monsters. You're seeing all your shortcomings. You're seeing all of it. And it's big, 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 big. How did you begin to start taking those steps to fall in love with you?
That's such a great question. Thanks for asking. It starts with a commitment to myself. It just starts with the decision of like, I will not now seek out other people's love. I will start seeking out my own. So, one is just a decision and a commitment. And the other one is creating a new support system in a new environment. My brother, who was alive at that time, suffered from mental health issues. And my mom would be like, do this, do that, go here. And I didn't really know how to protect myself, and my environment wasn't healthy. So going to the 12-step program, you learn how to get a different type of love
Hmm.
where it's not predicated on anything you give them because you just show up and everyone's vulnerable and no one gives you advice and no one interrupts you. And I was like, wait, there's a whole world where no one just gives you advice and interrupts you when you speak. Sitting in the 12-step program was the greatest gift. I think it's the greatest gift that exists on earth right now. I think it's like the secret sauce to life because it's God concentrated.
Hmm.
So really, first of all, I had to redefine like what a healthy environment was. So I went to the program a lot. I sat in the rooms. I realized there's a different way of life. I realized that other people won't think I'm crazy if I choose myself or love myself or say no to people, including my mom at the time. And then I devoured books. I became absolutely obsessed. The only reason I'm able to call myself a relationship expert is because I literally studied it at length, in nauseum, obsessive. How did two people choose each other? How does a one woman who has an alcoholic father with rage issues go into a room of like 300 men and like walk out of the party with the one guy who has going to drink in her marriage and then have alcoholic rage issues? Like, how does that happen? I became literally obsessed with this unconscious, invisible connection between people that makes people feel high chemistry or a deep connection or we're soulmates or I've never met anyone like this before. Like, how? How does that happen? How do people recreate patterns completely unconsciously? No one's like, I just want to find someone just like my dad who has the same problems. Like, no one does that. It's all unconscious. And
Hmm.
the foundation is loving yourself and breaking belief systems and learning how to protect yourself and all this, filling those voids. You don't accidentally attract it. But I devoured books. I became literally obsessed with every piece of information, like Melanie Beattie and Robin Norwood, these pioneers of teaching about codependency so
Yeah.
that I can see my patterns enough to know how to break them.
As you began to, I always tell people, this is how it starts. We make a decision. We make the decision inside with this subconscious being says, no, I'm going to take a different route. And then what we do is initiate the plans that will make that a reality, what we just spoke. And part of that making the reality is acquiring of data, knowledge. As we are now going to acquire knowledge, and this knowledge and all the stuff that we are going to use, we have to apply it into our life, into our everyday movement up and down through our situations. And then as we apply that knowledge, it becomes wisdom in our life, something that we are familiar with. We are known by it. We know it. We're familiar because we have taken that knowledge and we brought it here and we began to exercise and do things with it and became wisdom to us. As you are making that exchange between the knowledge that you're acquiring and the wisdom as you're applying that knowledge, what were some of those tools that you brought in, such like, what did you bring in meditation? What was the other things beyond reading did you bring into your life to assist you to love yourself and then to move from there?
Yeah, great question. So, of course, I brought in prayer. I started praying every morning. I stopped drinking beer. I stopped drinking coffee. When you really go in it, especially for people like who are codependents, which attract addicts, I
Hmm.
said, I had to look at myself. What about me? Because we don't marry who we want. We marry who we are. We
Hmm.
don't attract relationships based on what we want. It's about who we are. So I said, if I've attracted addicts for so long, what about me in my life has any addictive qualities? So I completely got rid of drinking beer, completely stopped drinking coffee, switched it out to smoothies, and started praying every morning. I was always journaling, but continued journaling. And the biggest thing was really change my environment. I packed up all my stuff and put it in storage in the house, and I took one suitcase and my guitar, and I traveled to Israel, and I moved completely away from my entire family and all of my environment, because if I was really going to transform and maintain my transformation and maintain the health that I've learned now, I cannot be constantly triggered and brought back into other people's toxicity. So I
Yeah.
moved completely to a different country, and I was then able to feel my own visions, my assignment, what God demanded of me. How do I heal now without the family of origin? So, for sure, prayer, changing of the food, getting much more sleep, and then also moving to an environment that facilitates a spiritual healthy growth instead of one where you're constantly triggered and reacting. And even if you're in a great place, if your environment doesn't support it, it will take you back down. So that's really huge.
Yeah, I hope you guys are listening to that advice because that is key in many of our lives. That when we are in our process of growing and expanding, and again, this is new to us because we are now in that personal development space and is serious about it. Sometimes you have to leave location, and it's always good to get away for a little while, even if you come back. When you come back, you will come back learn. You will come back different. You will come back with wisdom, one with insight to deal with all of those. You're going to know what those triggers are. You would have already learned how to initiate processes to assist you when those triggers take place. So there's a work that one must be doing with self, but sometimes you need to get away. In most cases, you do. And I always tell people, if you could travel, travel, because traveling to me, when you step out of your zone, it changes your being. That person is you. It causes you to become more empathetic. It opens you. You become open. You open to people's culture, their food, mindset, all of those different things. And it leaves you in a state of expectation. As you are moving through life and you moved and you're gaining muscles, if you will, self-love muscles, and you're moving through, how did you now begin to see that? And again, I can see it, how you're heading there, but I want you to announce it to those that are listening to us from all the data and yet you're studying about codependency and all these things from all these different coaches. How did you personally felt that God was pulling you towards that particular arena for the other aspect of your life, which is to become a servant? What was it that you began to notice in you that began to tap on you and says, wait a minute, I need you here?
It was really a beautiful process. At some point after I moved to Israel and I was in a new country, first I just got a job that I could get, even though I already had my master's and everything, and I was a counselor for some school. And then I moved to Jerusalem, and then I was still nannying, you're just trying to get your stability in a new country. And then at some point, I was like, I can't change the world if I don't take risks. It's a big risk to not get paid by someone else, but
Hmm.
to create your own impact and finances and energy. So I made a decision that I was going to open up my own private practice, and how I needed to do that was take a big risk because in Jerusalem, it's like one of the most expensive places in the world. Most people have roommates, And for me to open up in my own private practice, I needed to have my own space.
Yeah.
So I found a tiny little apartment, but was obviously still much more expensive. And I had to really leap into faith. I think a lot of people don't create the magic that they want in life because so much of it is leaping into faith of the unknown and just
Hmm.
praying God's got you.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I did. I got my own space. And then once I had my own space, I was able to feel my own energy, not be reactive to roommates, trust God's got me and the money will come. And then as soon as I made the decision that I'm going to start actively being a therapist, even before I marketed or someone on the bus said, "Hey, like I'm really struggling with dating. Can I come to you?" And God just brought me my first client. And I was like, "Sure, yes, of course." And of course, it's like so much less than I charged, later on. But she sat with me and I changed her life and changed who she attracted. And now she's happily married with kids. So I was like, wow, first of all, if you make a decision and you commit to it, God really fills it. And then I just grew from there. And then I had to iterate. So first I worked with men and that didn't work out. I was single, and the men would, it wasn't so therapeutic and conducive. Then I worked with couples, and I found that was really draining for me. I didn't really
Hmm.
enjoy seeing two people who weren't really meant to be together try to work it
Yeah.
out. It really like wasn't what I was here for. In the Torah, in the Old Testament, they speak about you have seven in the oral Torah, the commentaries, they speak about how you have seven potential soulmates. But if you work on yourself and you become enlightened and you do God's work and you love yourself and you really level up to one, like to your highest potential, then that's how you match your highest potential of love. So that's what I do now with singles. I'm like, girl, you can get married to an asshole. Like, that's possible. Like, you
Yeah.
can get married to a low level guy. It's not about getting married. People are like calling up matchmakers now, dating apps. And they're just they're wanting love so bad. I'm like, it's not about you getting married. It's about the life that you create after the wedding, not just getting you there, but like, what's your safety levels after that? How much can you surrender? How much joy and health do you truly have in the union that you've created and now bringing babies into? So I really iterated based on time and my clients and seeing what I was really good at and seeing how I was able to make the most amount of impact in a short period of time. And that's primarily with single women who are craving that love and don't know how to shift it inward. That through that iteration and always questioning myself and asking God for guidance, did I come up with my power and my passion, which is mostly speaking, like speaking on stages to anyone and everyone
Hmm.
energetically, as well as then privately, the one-on-ones with single women or in corporate situations, which again changes the inner culture that affects productivity.
Yeah. I came out of corporate America, and if you have a individual that is not whole, they are going to be fractured at work. And it's just normal. I mean, society teaches us that way, and this is what they call normal. They teach us that we need to fragment our life. You work differently, this. And so this one individual got so many fragmented pieces that by the time they get home and with their family, they're too tired to be the whole thing, to deal with mom and, their wives or their husbands and so forth. They're split up. But when you go on like what you're about to do in corporate America, when you bring personal development to that individual in that situation, when that individual becomes one, they will become more productive at work. They will be more productive as an individual. And so this split personality that the world, and again, because they need cogs, and cogs are easy to be burnt out. And when they're burnt out, they just toss them and start a new one. And that's what corporations have been telling the kids for many years. And that's what you said. It's changing now because the kids are looking, going, hell no, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to give it a shot. And as you mentioned, faith plays a great deal when one becomes an entrepreneur in life. Your life is an entrepreneur experiment. And as you are beginning to apply the principles as an entrepreneur, you unplug from the normal way. And when you unplug from the normal mindset, that's when you have an opportunity to expand and grow as to who you are. And that salary is always one of the last things that you have to overcome. And the only way you can overcome your salary, because it's programmed that this is your security, is that you must walk by faith. There is no other way on the planet. I'm going to give you guys this piece of advice. The Bible says, "For by grace are you saved through faith. It is a gift of God." What the Bible is explaining there is a process that God has given to us. For by grace, grace, the original language, and I love the original language. I studied this for many years, especially this because God had told me to go and study this, and I studied this topic for about 3 years. Grace means the divine influence upon the heart and the benefit that it brings to you. And I'm gonna show you that process in play. And faith, the grace is God's responsibility. You can't do nothing. You can't divinely influence someone's heart. But what you have is faith. You can bring that. And so, for by grace, God's responsibility, are you saved? How? Through faith, your part. So, you in partnership with God, He with His grace, you with your faith, is going to bring you salvation. You're going to be saved in whatever you're doing. So here you are. I've decided I'm going to start my own business, and you're on the bus and you're talking, and God's grace works on this woman. And your faith is already exercised because you said you're going to do it, and you're in faith. He now, his responsibility, he's looking at you. You're doing your part. And he said, "Oh, I need to do this." And he, through his grace, his divine influence on the heart of that woman, and she turns and says, "Can you come and help me?" That's it. And so when one walks by faith, we are partnering with God. And so when you walk by faith and you manifest, your faith manifests in many ways: gratitude, praising, trust. These are all roots and parts of faith. As you are maintaining that, give him the time to work on those cold, hard hearts, and he will. But you have to maintain and let your faith manifest as worship, praise, the trusting, all of these things. Those are aspects of faith. So you guys got a piece of nugget. I hope you take it and run with it. So here you are. You
Love
are,
it.
God is working with you. He's getting you, switching your mind. You're getting to see the fruits with these folk, these women. You tried the couple and you did not fit. Now that you fit, talk to me as to one of those clients. You talked about your first one, which was you, and then you talked about the one that God provided on the bus. Talk to me about one of those others where you came to you and they're just done. They're just broken. And from what you knowledge and gain and all your wisdom and everything, you were able to now take this individual. And I tell people you get a chance to witness their birth. And that is when you begin to move their old perspective and land them into a new one. And the Bible says, "And you shall know the truth." And whatever that truth is of their trauma that you bring them to, they have this degree of freedom and life. It goes, and you see that light bulb moment. Talk to us about one of those. I know what it does to you, but talk to me about that individual when you brought them over that bridge of the darkness into the light and they became, because I want the audience to hear your process as to how you do what you do.
So the process of how I do what I do or their revelation, which one
You,
first?
what you do. Your questions will always find their revelations, but you, what you do.
A part of it is inspiration. A part of it is education. So the inspiration is like, you don't deserve pain and suffering. Like, God will give you your own challenges in life, but a lot of pain is preventable. Like,
Mhm.
there is a whole category of pain that's preventable, especially from relationships that drain you. So one of it is inspiration. Like, you don't deserve pain. You're not here meant to suffer. You're not someone else's caretaker. And then the educational part is like addiction and codependency. And if you don't love yourself, how you really, really, really have a need to be loved and to give and to get attention. And so if we don't give ourselves attention, You genuinely crave it and seek it out for survival.
Hmm.
So it's not like, oh, love and attention, it's like this extra benefit to life. It's like, no, you really need it. So then you go out instead of inside to yourself and God, and then finding someone who merges with that, you go outside of yourself and you seek people who will create drama. And that drama, that peak of energy will make you feel alive and will temporarily take you out of your depression and your anxiety because you're being literally physiologically peaked in arousal because you're managing the relationship. He called, he didn't call, he said he wants me, he doesn't want me. You're like excited, even though it's exhausting exciting. It's like a drug. Like physiologically, unhealthy relationships mirror the same exact patterns as drug use. You have highs and you have lows. And when you're not taking the drug, you're thinking about the next time you're going to take the drug. How many women are not talking to the boy or the guy or her husband or her whatever, and she's thinking about the next time he's going to call, or when she gets to call, or when she's going to text him, or when he's going to the addiction, the amount of mental space that is part of unhealthy relationships first needs to be brought to the awareness of the individual. So, like, inspire, like, you don't deserve pain. You are only good. God is only good. Second thing is the education of understanding the physiology behind it, as well as how codependency and addiction, which everyone suffers from until you get it under your control. Everyone's either trying to control a relationship or themselves with a drug, with something that takes them out of their own head. So getting them to understand that. And then the antidote, which is self-love. And so I break it down for them. Self-love is acceptance, protection, and forgiveness. So people are like, how do I love myself? And obviously I wrote books and I have little things hard stuff to give my clients. And I have a course that I run that they can have the information every week on a group call. So it's not like information that goes in and out. It slowly becomes who they are when they
Hmm.
show up every week and get the information. Also, my husband's on the call. So you see a healthy, stable man in action, which is pretty profound.
Hmm.
But acceptance, loving yourself as is. Like, you don't need to change. You're the perfect age, you're the perfect weight. There's absolutely nothing that has happened to you that can affect who you are. What you've done or what has been done to you does not change the goodness inside of you, does not change your worth. And so, kind of reshifting that their trauma isn't bad, it's just an opportunity to love themselves completely as is. So many people think, well, I've done this or he's done that or my parent this, and they identify with their traumas and make themselves feel less than or bad because of the trauma that they've been through or that they've had done to them, instead of recognizing the divinity inside of them and that they are only good and deserving of only good. And so that's accepting yourself as is. There's nothing you need to change right now to be fully, fully lovable. And protection is, now that I know I'm fully lovable and that I'm worthy of only good, how do I protect it? What's my environment? What are my relationships? Who do I need to walk away from? Who do I need to stop talking to? So many people's energies are drained by people who have access to their phone or their door. And they just call them up and bitch and moan, and all of their energy is drained trying to hear or solve other people's problems. So you change your environment, you learn how to protect yourself with your relationships and where you're at, and you put up boundaries. And that's a whole teaching of itself. And then forgiveness. Everything that happened in the past no longer exists. Even the horrible people who might have done something bad or the bad thing that happened. Forgiveness is a gift, and you forgive yourself for your mistakes. You forgive yourself for hurting yourself. You forgive yourself for being with people who didn't love you or light you up. And you forgive people who taught you these unhealthy patterns. And when you work through those things, the inspiration plus the education and those components, you have a system, a strategy, and a blueprint to consistently transform your life and get you out of those dark spots that will still come much faster and much more elevated.
I love that. Guys, I've kept her for a long time. We're going to provide all of her links. Get a book, get the books. You know how I feel about books. They house wisdom, knowledge, and insight. Get into her class. Learn who you are. You guys want to have a healthy life? get to her so that she can educate you how to do that and love the self. It is the beginning of your beginnings. Unless you learn how to do that, your life is going to be a mess. And so you have someone who has some insight, some knowledge, and has been through some stuff. And you guys need to get into her space. We're going to provide all of it again. And I just want to thank her for coming. Chaya, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much for having me and for creating such a beautiful space and for taking that one moment of inspiration where you saved one life to save millions. As they say in the Old Testament in the Bible, when you save one life, you save a world, and you are really saving worlds.
Thank you so much. And so are you as well. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I know I kept you a little over. I was trying to look at the time, but
It's okay.
thank you. Thank you so much. I deeply appreciate you spending time with me. And I know that you have to run.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully, you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.